Name is Hope Alwine. I will be doing this webinar on designing for diversity, how neurodivergence shapes the user experience. This webinar is kind of a recycled thing from a previous webinar, so some of the slides are very similar, but we are going to be touching more on kind of the user experience side of things instead of the WCAG requirements for. And going to our next slide, we're going to talk about the agenda. First, we're going to define what neurodiversity is, and then do a deeper dive into defining neurodivergent and some conditions that are labeled as neurodivergent, and then move into how neurodiversity impacts the user experience. Next, we're going to cover some considerations for neurodivergent users with some examples, and wrap it up with neurodiversity and inclusive design. All right, let's get started. So first things first, what is neurodiversity? So the term was originally coined in the 1990s by Australian sociologist Judy Singer. It is a concept embraced in both sociology and psychology, emphasizing the social aspects over the medical terminology. Singer wrote about this concept in her 1998 sociology thesis, bringing a new perspective to light, positing that people with different brain types are not abnormal, but bring different skills to the table. The paradigm shift was continued by Dr. Nick Walker with the changing of traditional views on the normal brain versus atypical brains. To conceptualize neurodiversity, think about different ways people navigate a website. So let's say that a user is wanting to find how to contact a company. Some users would just go straight to the search box instead of exploring the site, while others would go to the home page and maybe look within the footer, expecting some form of contact information within that area. Other people would use sitemaps, and there's some people like myself where I go straight to the about page or a contact us page. It is fascinating how people seek information, and that is one thing that I love doing research on. And neurodiversity focuses how different brain types and how individuals utilize their strengths or weaknesses. Moving on, let's look at what we've defined neurodiversity, but what does it mean to be neurodivergent? So according to the Cleveland Clinic definition, neurodiversity is a non-medical term that describes people whose brains develop or work differently for some reason. This means people have different strengths or struggles from people whose brains who develop or work more typically. While some people who are neurodivergent have medical conditions, it also happens to people where a medical condition or a diagnosis has not been identified. So neurodivergent is not a one-size-fits-all definition. It can include many more conditions than what we have labeled on this particular slide. So while there is a separate definition for neurodivergent, it shouldn't be put in a negative connotation, but rather as a different approach to traditional thought processes. So let's look at some common conditions that are labeled as neurodivergent. You have autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, which is a range of complex brain developmental conditions that can affect social skills, cause sensory issues, and often lead to a narrow range of focused interests. There's also attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, which is a developmental disorder primarily characterized by patterns of inattention, hyperactivity, or impulsivity. And impulsivity. And the last three, I apologize, but I always mispronounce these. So we have dyslexia, which is characterized by an impaired ability to read or recognize written language. You also have dysgraphia, which is difficulties with expressing thoughts through written language and an impaired ability to understand handwritten language. And lastly, we have dyscalculia. Got it. An impaired ability to understand, learn, and communicate mathematical concepts. So now that we've looked at a couple of different neurodivergent conditions, let's dive into how neurodiversity impacts the user experience. So each user is unique, but there are patterns that emerge that have been identified as barriers for conditions relating to neurodiversity. Some common patterns include motion can trigger adverse reactions and be distracting for users with ADHD or autism. If you have an e-commerce site that has a lot of pop-ups or flashy animations to draw attention to a single point, like a sale or a sign-up modal, that can become a barrier for some users. We'll touch more on this point later on in the webinar. Another consideration is complex language. Different industries have specific terminology. For example, in the library realm, we use words like catalog, interlibrary loan, and databases. These are words that are typical for everyday use for librarians, but for the average person, they may need additional help to define these terms. If a user has to stop and continually look up words, they may consider that a barrier. Tying into the last point, cognitive overload is when a user is overwhelmed by an amount of information presented at one time. As a librarian, I watched many of my students experience this as I was giving presentations on how the library works, how to use databases, and where to find resources. So much information is being thrown at them in one session that the brain stops the intake of new information, and the student is usually left frustrated and exhausted. Websites can have the same effect with too much information present on a single page, with the overuse of graphs, images, videos, animations, and more. Next is the importance of having easy access to help articles or alternate forms of the same information. When it comes to neurodiversity, acknowledging that learning comes in many forms is vital. In the realm of education, studies have proven that not all students benefit from traditional schooling methods like lectures and presentations. Some students learn better with a tactile interface type learning or through short videos or a gaming like environment. This translates to web development as having alternative forms of the same information can prove invaluable for some users. Another thing to think about is time limits. Time limits for automated logout after inactivity is becoming a normal thing I see whenever I'm auditing websites or web applications. The difficulty with this is that some users with cognitive disabilities may require a longer time to process information on the page. Having the ability to extend time limits is important, and it's also a WCAG requirement. And it also helps for auditors for accessibility. Key point to remember. The last point I'd like to bring up is error identification and suggestion. It is a WCAG requirement to identify errors and to have that information available to users in text. There is another requirement that a suggestion should be given when possible to guide a user through how to fix their error. I realize that for some fields, it seems kind of pointless because you would assume that most everybody knows what an email looks like, but think about it through a neurodivergent lens. You may have somebody that is just maybe new to technology and isn't as familiar with emails. So having that example email can definitely go a long way. On the next slide, we're going to look at some more considerations for neurodivergent users and examples to kind of put them into perspective. So each type of website or web application has a unique component and requires different things for neurodivergent users. Take a step back and look at components through a neurodivergent lens. So we've been talking about how neurodivergence impacts the user experience. Let's look at these principles in a real-world digital environment. So each platform has different touch points. To design inclusively, we need to examine specific components like pop-ups, video controls, and complex forms through the neurodivergent lens. So let's start with e-commerce sites. One thing that I see a lot whenever I'm auditing an e-commerce site is you'll have multiple overlapping or aggressive pop-ups that quickly lead to cognitive overload and frustration. So instead of stacking several sequential pop-ups like an email sign-up, discount alert, cookie banners, keep them to a minimum and consolidate multiple offers into a single clean window. Ensure that form fields are clearly labeled and features helpful inline error suggestions, such as an example of an email like name@example.com, so that if the user enters an invalid email, they have an example to go off of. Another thing that I've seen on e-commerce sites is videos and animations. Autoplaying videos or background movement can easily distract or disorient neurodivergent users. Always disable your autoplay and provide visible, easy to find controls like play and pause, as well as clearly labeling what the video contains. Kind of switching gears, we're going to look at informational sites. So this could be, I know I use library websites a lot, but it could also be a medical facility or a financial institution. So these types of websites that are geared more towards educating people about a specific institution. So something to really think about whenever you are using this kind of website is plain language. So dense, highly technical jargon creates significant friction for users who process language differently. Strive to use plain language whenever possible. When technical terms are necessary, like a medical term or a financial term, provide simple context like tooltips, dialogue modals, or a glossary link to define terminology on the spot. Another thing to think about is alternate content formats. Apologies. So complex data, infographics, or charts can be difficult to interpret for users with dyscalculia. Got it. Or cognitive processing differences. Always provide textual descriptions or alternative formats for visual data so users can digest the information using a method or assistive tools that best work for them. And lastly, and this kind of works for all sites, the use of sans serif font choices. So sans serif fonts have been proven to be easier to read for users with dyslexia, as smooth endings allow the brain to better process the letter. If you have a lot of text, ensure that the font is easy to read on any side screen. So the key takeaways are by simplifying interactions, minimizing unexpected distractions, and offering flexible content options, we create a smoother, more supportive experience for everybody. Which leads us to our wrap-up slide, which is neurodiversity and inclusive design. So a couple of points I wanted to kind of sum up with before reviewing everything that we've learned in this webinar. We're going to look at So to acknowledge varied cognitive approaches, design with fundamental understanding that every brain perceives, navigates, and processes information differently. Avoid one-size-fits-all designs by building flexible user options to ensure a broader, more seamless user experience for all users. Another point is to emphasize continuous user testing. Direct feedback from neurodivergent users through regular user testing is invaluable for identifying blind spots and building products that cater to authentic user needs. Next, we have a shift to proactive accessibility. Build accessibility into the foundation of product development rather than adding it as an afterthought. This will save you money in the long run if you do it from the start, then you don't have to go back and make a lot of changes. And lastly, focus on strengths and unique viewpoints. View neurodiversity through an asset-focused lens rather than a deficient model. This embraces the diverse skills and perspective of neurodivergent users to bring and enrich design standards and functional innovation. So just to kind of wrap up with everything that we've talked about through this webinar, we've covered some core concepts and definitions of neurodiversity and neurodivergent, as well as some conditions that are labeled as neurodivergent, and how it is a non-medical sociological perspective to emphasize individual strengths. This does lead to an impact on user experience, and we've identified some key digital barriers such as motion pop-ups, overly complex language, cognitive overload, rigid time limits, and inadequate error handling. We've also discussed a few practical examples to outline actionable design modifications across e-commerce and informational sites. And also we've briefly talked about some inclusive design mindsets to consider whenever you are looking at designing through a neurodivergent lens. And that wraps it up for me. And we do offer how accessible web can help. So there are many things that Accessible Web can do to help. We offer some academy courses that you can learn more about accessibility and also about user experience with accessibility and the standards of WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Um, we do offer RAMP, and that coupon code that Ben and Gianna provided earlier, you can use that to do a free trial. We also consult and do some training on the if requested. Another thing where I come in is where we perform accessibility audits, where we look at your website or web application and give you feedback on what is passing and what is not. We also provide VPATs upon request. And so that wraps it up for us. And moving on into our discussion time.